going live.
Okay, okay, Father, we thank you for today. Thank you for allowing us to be here as we delve a little bit more into what you have to say to us and have this opportunity to respond favorably in Jesus' name. Amen. So tonight we're going to work through focus on pleasing God is what we're going to focus on. We won't be getting through it. I mean, I'll tell you the 8 things that will put us in a position to please Him. We'll only cover 3 of them tonight, and then we'll get to the rest. If we have time, we may do more. But let me first of all give you the 8 things that please God. Obedience, faith. Now this one goes together, justice and doing good. Thanksgiving and praise, they go together. Holiness, love toward God / reverence. A surrendered life and patience. So those are 8 things that the Lord said. This is what puts us in a position where we can please Him. That if these things are not happening, then we're probably missing something. So you can probably reflect on what you're saying. Let me just go back over those again to make sure that you have them. That's obedience, faith, justice and doing good, thanksgiving and praise, holiness, love toward God / reverence, surrendered life and patience. Surrendered life and patience. All of those things are a struggle. Humanly, all of those things are a struggle. Well, let me go back over them for the 3rd time to make sure we have them. Obedience, faith, justice, doing good, thanksgiving and praise, holiness, love toward God / reverence, surrendered life, and patience. Now, listen to this verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9. So we make it our goal to please Him, whether we're at home, anybody, or away from it. In other words, we make it our goal to please Him in spite of what we're doing, where we are. We make it our goal to please Him. To talk about pleasing the Lord. So we've got that as a process. If that's our goal, then everything we're doing is just to try to move us in that direction. So the 3 things we'll deal with tonight is obedience. We'll deal with faith and justice and doing good. Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Because one must first believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So now what that says, your life or our life has to be lived in a way with what we call knowledge deficit. So let me explain that. Knowledge deficit says something that you can't say, I know already. Something that you can't say, I know how it's going to turn out. Something that you can't say, I know how to do this. Because that doesn't require faith. That what that does, that just says, I'll just do it again. Or I know who to call to make it happen. So, or I know how to fix this. Well, that's not faith. The faith, the living by faith would mean then that it's something that in my own awareness, I would have no idea how to bring this to pass. So therefore, there has to be something outside of, even when you're even when you're doing such things as people like to have vision board parties. They call vision board, and you go and you start mapping all these things out, and then you put your little vision out there. Well, this is what this is, but you came up with it and limited that. So even that does not require faith. That requires a plan. That does not require faith. So these great parties that people are paying to go to, these vision parties, and they come in and jot all their stuff down, and they think they're killing it, and then they realize there's no faith in this. Because faith actually begins at the end of yourself. Because Ephesians 3:20 said if he's able to do, then that says it's at the end of you. Faith kicks in when human capacity has been exhausted, because it requires divine, it requires God to be in it. So therefore, faith needs to have God in it in order to bring something to pass. So in other words, he says, you can't please me if you don't have me in what you do. Or you'd be finding yourself doing something for me. For me. And he says, so I made you, how can you do something for me? You can actually cooperate with me, but you can't do something for me. So therefore, he said, you can offer something to me, and then I'll take it, and then I'll start doing something else with it. So that literally is what he's saying. If you don't have faith in your life, now I understand. I mean, you go to planners and you go to people and they say, put this in order and put that in order, and then you do that, and that's great that you should, but then you can't rely on that, because now once that happens, it's time to give that to him. Now it's time to take that next step, then give it to him, and it will become different from what you already thought that it was. Because once you release it to him, that allows him to take it from there. So you may write something, you may, why do you think they have editors and they do proofs and then they go over it, and you've given it your best effort, and then they come back and scrutinize it and do some other things and say, that's not right. No, that's not right. Well, then if we start turning these things over to the Lord, then we realize he might say, no, not quite like that. No, that's not what I really want. I know what you were thinking. I know what your intention was, but now you need me to please me. If I'm not in it, I cannot be pleased. I cannot be pleased. So now I come back to that. Did I leave him out of something, or did I throw something at him and say, God, make this happen. God, make it happen. Make it happen. You know, he said, then you hear people say, well, that wasn't nothing but God, nothing but God, nothing but God. Okay, all right, was he in the plan? Oh, God's gonna make this happen. I know he is. You know, God's hand was all over that. Was he in the plan? Can you back up and stop to look to see, after I did it, I included him in? And that's the thing you got to look at. Because if you did not include him in it, then he's not pleased. He's not pleased. All right, so that's where we'll start. So what have you just gotten just there, just with what we just said? What have you gotten? Because that in and of itself is something that should move some things somewhere. What did you just get just out talking about faith?
What I got out of it, just hearing those nuggets right there, is just it's so supernatural. It's really beyond our understanding from the time we were born and from the time we leave here. Everything in between there is just faith, because we have no control over nothing from beginning to end. It's all faith. It's really all dependence on God. Everything.
But if I don't, I can know that. I mean, I can know that intellectually. I can know that I need to have God in it. But if I don't have him in it, then it still says I'm still walking by sight. He's got to be in the mix, or I'm still walking by sight. I'm walking by sight. Now, yes, to be free and to do everything he said, then it's going to require this ingredient of faith. But I could keep living and acknowledge Because here's these great testimonies. What people saying? Well, nothing but God, nothing but God. Nothing but God. God did it. God did it. And if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be nowhere. And so we throw that out there. But it's to say, was he really in it? Was he really in it? Or we just were throwing something at him to see what sticks on the wall when we do it? I said, nothing but the Lord. I couldn't do it if it wasn't for the Lord. Okay, but was he in it? Was he in it? Or did you just illegally sign off and say it was him? If somebody walked behind you, could they see that something supernatural happened for it to come to pass? And if you can't see anything that was outside of that plan, then that says that was not walking by faith, because you didn't leave room. Have you ever found yourself presenting something and say, God, please let it happen. God, make this work out. God, make this work out. And he wasn't even in that. He wasn't in any of that. You threw something up there and told him to bless what you threw up there. He wasn't in it. All right. All right.
That I have to come to the end of myself. I can't think that I'm doing anything or bringing about some outcome, or God is not pleased with that.
All right, translate that.
It's not faith if I can produce the outcome.
That sounds so different than all that other stuff she was saying.
Yeah, you said we have to come to the end of ourselves.
No, I
I got to
understand.
come to the end
I
of
understand.
myself. You said that. I just posted it on Facebook.
Yeah. You got to come to any yourself, but I said translated. Now, when she translated, which do you prefer, the translation? Now, if the translation says, I got it. If I can do it, then I got it. No, we're pushing it. We're going to keep pushing it because we want to even be able to say to people who don't know anything so they can understand exactly what you mean without taking it for granted. Because, we have this language. We have this language that we use in the church, and we're using this language, and we just make assumption that people know what we're talking about, and they really don't. So we're trying to get past all of that. Okay, anybody else?
For me, I'm with First Lady with faith begins at the end of me. So understanding my walk with God, having him involved in every area, everything that I do. Just making it a daily conversation with him. And this is just me seeing it from this perspective of what you're saying. Having God in my daily conversations, therefore, I want to be able to do what it is that he's called me to do. So instead of doing like 911 type of conversations with him, constantly asking him whatever it is that I'm doing, Lord, is this your will? Even when he brings something to my remembrance, I say, Lord, I just thank you for pointing out where my keys was, because I just want to walk right on out of here and leave it. I'm just saying, I want to have that kind of conversation that is a daily, constant conversation with him. And that helps build my faith in him in everything. And so that ties back to me when you were saying faith begins at the end of me. So if I'm having him in my daily conversations, I don't know if I'm explaining it where you guys can understand what I'm saying, but
Ask them.
Are you guys understanding what I'm saying? Okay, I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, the only way you have to ask. You follow me? Like, you say, you feeling me? And they got to ask. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what you were asking prior to me coming in, but to chime in to what she was saying, I'm also doing, and I don't want to say working, but working on it, asking him with everything, making everything a daily conversation instead of doing the 911 prayers. But what I'm trying to avoid is when we get an opportunity, making sure that it's something that is in his will, not just because I feel like any opportunity is not given to you by God. Sometimes it can be out of his will. It can be an overload or something that may be, sent from the enemy. So sometimes I'm like, okay, well, this look good, this sound good, but is this what you want me to do?
All right. Well, I'm glad that you said that. So let me help us intellectuals a bit, because our brain will get in the way. Our brain, our knowledge, our past experiences our observing what's happening with other people will get in the way of our walking by faith. Because we'll start to rely on what we know. Oh, I can just fix this. Or I don't even have to think about this. I can fix this. And you'll go and do it and you won't even consult. Because you could mess up while even reading directions to something. But you're convinced if I just got to do that. And you'll get so convinced about direction that you still can miss it. And so our knowledge, our experiences, what we observe of people can get in the way because naturally we're copycats. And naturally we'd rather not ask for help. Naturally we'd rather just take it and do it. So there's this level of self-reliance that's kind of embedded in our makeup. I'll take it, I'll do it. So we have to guard against it because before you know it, you're in it. You're in it. Oh, I can do that. And okay, yeah, maybe you can. Maybe you can. But is it a bless do that? That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing.
When you mention about, I guess there's some things that is not done by faith, it's just kind of like a plan? Is it, I guess, something that you can...
If it doesn't require faith, it's a plan. Something that's a plan doesn't require faith.
So when you do all you can, I guess your human capacity, then how do you kick in the faith part?
Don't do anything yet.
Okay.
That's what it means. You don't do anything yet. You're like, okay, let me stop. Let me offer up. Again, if it's not a life-threatening situation, let me stop. Let me offer it up. Was behind this lady today. So Gwen, right at Jefferson near 44, there's a whole lot of traffic. So the light changes to green on the side where we're getting ready to pull out. It was a lady in front of me. Clearly it had changed to green. Then this car just zips on down. This lady, she had a Florida license plate. She sat there for about 10 or 15 seconds. And I just saw her looking left and looking right before she pulled off. So now it's about 7 or 8 seconds left for the light being green on the side that is really green. But because of the fact of what she saw, she wasn't going to trust the fact of somebody else pulling off down there. That literally is a picture of what faith looks like. It's not that she couldn't drive, not that she doesn't know how to drive, but she didn't trust the fact, I need to just pull on out here. She kept waiting. And I'm just sitting behind her just waiting to see even if she's going to pull off at all. Because I knew she could have just sat there, been stunned and not do anything. But that little subtle thing is a way of saying, do I or do I not? And she waited, and then she pulled off. Wait and pull off. I get you say, I need to see if there's another one coming through here. And so it's a plan if you thought it out, you say you can do it, and you just proceed. And you just proceed. Versus, Lord, I've done all that I know to do. I've talked to who all I know to talk to. Now I'm going to present this to you. But that's not natural for us. We're ready to go. That pause, just that pause. Okay, anybody else? So faith, there's a transition from the natural to the supernatural, and that's faith. Once the supernatural kicks in, faith has already been activated, but it's in between. Otherwise, everything remains natural. Because the supernatural has to be invited in for there to be something supernatural to happen. Now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, it said the natural mind cannot receive the thing. So therefore, when I'm operating in the natural, then I'm not hearing the spiritual. I'm kind of locked in on what I know. on what I know. So there has to be a detour away from my natural dialogue to get into the spirit realm, to get into the spiritual dialogue. I got to go back to what God's word says to be able to kind of now start getting me to thinking right, or I'm still in my natural path. I'm still down my natural path. That really is it. Yes, ma'am. Brother Albert, you got it?
What I'm hearing, and you can tell me if this is correct, when you have faith and when you get to a point where you don't know what to do, you get still.
Well, here's the deal. You do have faith. Romans 12 says he's given unto each one of us a measure of faith. So we do have faith. That's not our issue. The real issue is, are we going to trust God more than we trust us? We do have faith. We have access to the supernatural. That's not our challenge. We do have access.
So I hear a lot, sometime when you don't know what to do, you have to still move. Is that correct?
Depends on who told you that. Who were you listening to? See, again, who were you listening to? Was that the sound of faith, or was it the sound of this is what I do? That's a totally different conversation, isn't it?
Well, I don't know who told me that, but I know I've heard those sounds
Okay.
about when you don't know what to do. When you don't know what to do, you got to move. Then God will take control of the rest.
Okay. Doesn't sound like faith. It sounds like I'm hoping he does, as opposed to I'm sure he will. If I start moving, he's going to take over. Okay. No. When you don't know, actually, we don't know anyway. So therefore, we've already answered the original question, we don't know. So therefore, that says I need to just be giving it to him. Because I already know I don't know. I know what I know. That's what I know. I don't know what I don't know. But I know what I know. What I do know is, if I turn it over to him, it's going to be a whole lot better than it will be if I don't. Now that I know for sure. So while I'm sitting here toying with the fact, wondering whether I need to give it to him, then I already know it's going to be better off out of my hands into his. I don't have to be spiritually mature to understand that. I already know. I have major limitations, but if I turn it over to him, now my limitations don't affect the outcome, because now it's out of my hand. Oh, okay. Let's walk it through. See, faith. Walking by faith seems hard, but it's not. We just hard-headed. It takes more effort to resist God than to cooperate with him. Because you have to build a case to justify why I'm not going to do what he said. I got to come up with a whole lot of stuff instead of just, you know what, and when it says, without faith it's impossible to please him, I got to say, I don't want to please him. So first of all, I got to reject what he said. Now, God, I really don't want to please you, because I'm crystal clear. If you told me I can't please you without faith, then when I don't allow faith to take the lead, then that says then I don't want to please you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I believe I saw the sovereignty of God and faith both at the same time with my mother's circumstance. You know, the Bible says faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. I was hoping that she would get better, because Karen and I was there at the emergency room when she first had the stroke, and I was like, Lord, it's going to take all you, because ain't nothing, you know, I know she ain't going to get better without your sovereignty, and our faith is just, you know, in you, and I just seen it all happen, and going back to where I was saying is, I was hoping that she got better, and she did, and I couldn't see, when I saw her first have the stroke, I couldn't see beyond that, so I really didn't know whether she was going to get better or not, but faith is the evidence of things is not seen. But now I see that she did get better by his sovereignty and grace, and it took faith all the way for that.
Now,
that-
you could have worried about her and miss him. Now, let me walk you through this a little bit more then. It would not have meant that you did not have faith if she did not get better.
Oh, right, yeah, because she couldn't. I mean, right? He didn't have to let her get better.
But that would not mean you didn't have faith.
Okay.
Are you all following that? That does not mean you didn't have faith. Now, some will say, you know, I didn't have enough, or I don't want to trust God no more because did not, or I needed more faith. Yeah, okay. Okay. Had I really believed God, he would have done such and such. No. No, that's false guilt. Because it has nothing to do with that. Because you're not cutting a deal with God. He just says, trust me. And we need to understand our faith and trust in God doesn't mean the conclusion is what we've drawn up. Because there again, we draw it. That's the other side. See, because one of the other things that we let me just go back over these 8 things because we're going to get to them. Because one of them is going to be a surrendered life that we won't be dealing with tonight. But we've said obedience, faith, justice and doing good, thanksgiving and praise, holiness, love toward God, reverence. The other one is a surrendered life. Then there's patience. If I surrender it, then that means then I can't try to get him to, I can't try to hustle God. Like I may have, I mean, because just a little peek at the surrendered life is a nevertheless. It's a nevertheless attitude. It said, God, here's what I want, but nevertheless. But nevertheless. That's sign of maturity when you say, but nevertheless. Nevertheless. I want this, but nevertheless. Not my will. But that's the surrender. That's the surrender. Because there are some things we're going to say, God, do this, God, do this, God. I'm trusting you, God. I'm believing you for this. And he said, when Jesus in the garden, so let's just go there then. When we start looking, he said, if you can move this cup from me, if you can move this cup from me, please do it. This is what I really want now. Take this thing from me. But nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be. Oh, I want so bad that I don't have to go through this. God, he's like, Father, there's got to be another way. But then his spiritual sanity kicked in and said, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done.
But Pastor,
Yes, sir.
what if I promised God that I would never, ever do what I did to get myself into that situation if he would just get me out of it?
You promised him you won't do it again?
Yeah, I'd never do that again. That'd be the last time I ever do that again.
Yeah, but...
But just make it happen what needs to happen right now.
Yeah, but he knew you were going to have that thought and request before you fixed it in your mind. So he already knew, oh, Mike's going to come to me and he's going to try to charm me into saying, get him out of this, and he's not going to do it anymore. First of all, I know he was coming, and I know if he's lying or not. Now, but I'm going to let him come to me anyway. I'm not going to shut him down. I'm going to let him come to me. And even if I do get him out of it, it's going to be a part of my bigger plan of all things working together. I might let him stay in it too. Even though I'm going to let him ask me, I still may let him stay in it, and he can beg and please me until he pass out. I may or may not, because I hold the final decision. Now, I might get him out of it. I may let him out even though he said it, and I know he may come back tomorrow and do the same thing. I still might let him out, because I'm going to let him deal with him lying to me. Because I got him out of it, and here he is back again. And it'd be like, it's like, Micah, you're not the first one that's done this. I asked some more of my children. They done the same thing. Do you want some names? He said, some other of my children did that. Some of them you know. Okay, anything else about the faith piece?
Okay, so I just want to give a real life example to make sure I'm following this right. So you said faith, well, it's not faith when we actually like have a plan to proceed, but it is faith when you've done all that you can, and now, you're just leaving it, it's all up to God. So let's say, for example, there's a public service loan forgiveness program, and within,
Go on.
so within this program, like at the end of it, all your loans are forgiven, and like, oh my goodness, thank you, Jesus. But in the midst of it, like right now, it's a part of like a process, a plan. So you sign up, you do all the different things, but like the faith kicks in when you're like at the end of it, you hope they just are going to do what they said they were going to do and forgive it. Is that the faith? Where does the faith part kick in, or there's no faith in that at all? That's just following the process.
That actually is following the process. They just say, they've already said this is going to happen.
That's what they say.
Well, hold on. Your question is whether or not they've done it for anyone. Mm-hmm. If they've done it for anyone by following the steps, then you follow the steps. If somebody doesn't follow the steps, then it definitely is not going to happen, although some people don't want to go through the steps. If you miss any of the steps to get to that place of the releasing of the funds, then you're not eligible. Mm-hmm. But if you
Correct.
take all the steps, then they show you the clear pathway for that.
So that's not faith.
Now, you know what that is? That's an opportunity for one of the other things, or the 8 things that are part of is
Okay.
thanksgiving and praise,
Okay.
that he opened up the door. Because you would be operating in skepticism and doubt if you didn't believe that they've shown you the pathway and nobody's trying to cut a deal with you. It would be one thing if somebody said, I'll pay all your loan, all your bills off. Me as an individual came to you, give me all your bills and I'm going to pay them off. You'd probably be holding your breath wondering if it's true or not. But when they've mapped out a process to say everyone who falls into this category and you qualify by falling into that category, and they say you need to do this, then you're following things decently and in order in that respect. You begin to thank the Lord in advance for what he is doing, and you start walking it out. Because here's the deal. Even if you don't get it, you're no worse off than you were before. Yeah. Yeah, but you keep on rolling. No, see, faith is when there is no end in sight. You did not create that scenario to be eligible. It's already mapped out. Now, if you don't apply and come back to ask the Lord to wipe it clean, then it would be that. Because you would have missed the opportunity. Because we got to do, see, faith is when we do everything humanly possible, then he steps in if we give him permission to. So far, everything they've said, they've done it. So far, all these things, the last time, the last round, it did it. So therefore, the evidence is already there, follow through. That's why some of the individuals from some of these other parties are really blowing stuff up, because they trying to say you're giving it to people who don't deserve it and all of that, and some of their relatives are recipients too. Some of the same people who are protesting, some of their relatives are recipients. High-level hypocrisy is what it boils down to. That's a restate, yes. When you max out humanly, you become a candidate for divine intervention. You become a candidate. Until you do that, you're not a candidate. Because you haven't been a good steward. God's given you the ability to make phone calls, you don't make phone calls. And you want him to make the phone calls for you. Something you will miss because you didn't max out. Somebody could have been praying, Lord, help me with my loan debt, my student loan debt. And then they put this out there, and then we don't apply, and they're saying, Lord, help me out with this. And the Lord's saying, hey, do I have your attention? Have you read something lately? And it's like, well, Lord, please take this burden of pressure off me. And then they say, well, we have a maximum amount that you can get if you're eligible. And you're saying, Lord, oh, Lord, my God, help me, Almighty One. I love you, Jehovah. Oh, I just love you. And he's saying, excuse me, you're going to fill out the paperwork. You're going to turn it in. And, okay. I use humans in the earth realm to carry out my assignment. Think about it. As much as they're talking about it, there's more financial economic benefit in this country now that for the last 30, 40, 50 years, and they are screaming and hollering because it is, as though what's happening is the cause. When internationally you got all these other things going on, but they're looking, this economy is better now than it's been in forever. More jobs have turned up than forever, but they got to say it's a trick. It's a trick. It's something wrong with it. You know what they're doing? They're trying to replace us. Right. Okay. So the second thing is justice and mercy. In Micah chapter 6, verse 8, this is what it says. He has shown you what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. In other words, practice justice, show mercy, and walk humbly with him, which means we should be serving people in the community. We should be looking for ways where injustice is, getting involved, or supporting. Not taking advantage of people, looking for ways that people are better off. So he says, I'm expecting you to do this. I'm expecting you to do this. Now, if you did a word study and look for the word justice and go back from the beginning, you'll find hundreds of passages talking about justice. If you go back, just as one example, the cities of refuge. The cities of refuge was a holding place before people would be found guilty, but it was a safe place for them to go. Justice was being acted out. So justice has been a part of God's plan all along. And he said, I don't want the people to be taken advantage of. So when you're in a position that people are not taken advantage of, you need to get yourself involved. You get yourself involved. That's what he said. He said, what does he require? Justice, mercy, walk humbly with your God. So when we say, am I doing what God said? We need to be involved in something, which means you can't be on the sideline and not be involved. Yeah. If there's somebody that you know who is not registered to vote and they're talking to you, I'm not voting, you need to tell them they need to get their little self down there and get registered and vote. Amen. They need to know. Some people have missed out and won't get the chance to. I won't do any good. Oh, yes, it will. Because that facilitates justice. The only reason why some of the laws have gone the way that they have because some Christians were not out voting because they love Jesus so much they didn't want to register. I'm just going to pray. You need to vote too. You vote and pray. So you look for a cause. You look for something that you're going to be able to get involved in. Something you ought to be doing that you got to say, I need to be a part of. I need to be a part of. Helping somebody. Helping somebody without doing it with a catch or with an agenda. Or with an agenda. All right, so how much time do we have? Okay, all right. Then we'll just do the obedience, and this will be the last one for tonight. 1 Samuel chapter 15. And we're going to walk through this. Now, notice that I can't please God if I don't do what he says. That's right. Now, so when he makes something clear, then that means then we ought to be walking through that. Now listen, starting at verse 10 in 1 Samuel 15. Because we're going to walk slowly through this. So the word of the Lord came to Samuel. And God said, I'm grieved that I made Saul king because he's turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Notice what he says. I am grieved because he turned away from me and has not carried out my instruction. Remember now, James 4:17, it says, the one who knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to them it is sin. And Samuel was troubled. It bothered him, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Because remember, Samuel was the one who anointed him. Verse 12, so early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told Saul wasn't where he was supposed to be. There he has set up a monument, notice, in his own honor, and turned and gone down. You notice, self-serving, caught up, doing what he wanted to do. Remember, he had, only thing God is saying, he did not do. But go back to verse 10, he said, he has turned away from me. So when Samuel reached him, verse 13, Saul said, the Lord blessed you. This is what Saul said. The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instruction. Notice what he said. Oh, I've done everything God said. Now notice over here, God said, Samuel is a mess. He has turned his back on me, but the deception has set in on Samuel. I have carried out the Lord's instruction. I've done what he said. Notice verse 14. And Samuel said, if that's the case, why am I hearing the sheep keeping up that noise? And why am I hearing these cattle? Why are they still here? That he was told, so Saul answered, because he was told to destroy everything. Everything alive, animals, everybody. Verse 15, if you go back, chapters 14 and 15, then Saul answered, the soldiers. I want you to notice this now. Back in the garden, which lets you know the principle of first mention, it was dark. The blaming started in the garden when confronted with choices that were made. So you know this was dark, that now he had been influenced by the dark. Because this is going back to when God said, Adam, where art thou? What have you done? Who told you you were naked? Well, you know what? This woman you gave me, he said, who told this woman? So he started blaming. Now notice what he's doing. He said, Saul, he said, Saul, what you doing? He said, the soldiers, they spared the best of the sheep and the cattle. Notice how his language changes. To sacrifice to the Lord your God. See, he's gone. Remember, God already said he turned from me. So now he's, you hear the sound. You hear the sound. But, notice how I keep flip-flopping. We totally destroyed the rest. First he said they spared everything but the good, but we got rid of the rest. Now he joined in and say, but we did the rest of it. So Samuel said, stop. Shut up, in other words. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. He said, all that stuff you saying don't mean nothing. He said, let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Saul, tell me. See, he got so bold. Yeah, whatever the Lord said, me and the Lord cool. You know, he got this. I'm not concerned. I want to hear what the Lord said to you. Verse 17. So Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes, and you were not one of the heads of the tribes, it was the Lord anointed you king. He's trying to say, let me take you back historically. You were a nobody. And God picked you out and made you somebody. You weren't even thought about, and God picked you out. Verse 18, and he sent you on a mission. So first he told him, let me tell you how you got started. And now let me tell you what you're supposed to have been doing now. Verse 18, he sent you on a mission saying, go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Make war on them until you have wiped them out. So why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you take the good stuff and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? He said, so why did you do that? You knew what he said. You knew exactly what he told you to do. But dark had kicked in. Dark had kicked in. Because he had gotten full of himself. He built a monument. So, then notice. Verse 20. But I did obey the Lord. You see, the dark has gotten him. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. You see? Because once you start getting into that path, your thinking isn't right. And he said, I completely destroyed the Amalekites. I mean, he's already saying we didn't do it and they did. He said, but I brought back the king. He started to reveal more. I brought back the king. Then notice he said, the soldiers took the sheep and the cattle, but the best, what was devoted to God in order to sacrifice to him, to the Lord your God. There again, he's back to the Lord your God at Gilgal. You know he's gone. You know he's gone. I saved the king. They took the goods. Now you knowing that the soldiers are going to do everything he says. And Samuel replied, and this is where the obedience come in. Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the voice of the Lord? So he's answering, in other words, anything other than obeying, God considers it a sacrifice, an unwanted sacrifice, an unwanted sacrifice. He said, I don't even want that. To obey is better than sacrifice. And to heed is better than anything else you could do. Then he goes deeper. For disobedience or rebellion is like the sin of witchcraft. And look at listen to the rest of this. And arrogance or pride is like the evil of idolatry. So you notice what we get into. It said, once you start saying no to him, you've stepped into that place, that dark place. And he says, did you know that that's like witchcraft? That's like it is. He said, because this rebellion is like that. In other words, it says you're under a spell. You've been seduced, and you could be talked into anything else. If you think about the number of people who get into situations that after they become vulnerable, and then they end up doing things that they never would have done if they were in their right mind. And you could say, I can't believe they did this, but it's at that point they had been seduced into a situation where the thought process was gone. And this goes all the way back to the garden. You got to know, Eve knew. She knew crystal clear. But because it entertained and it was not pushed back, See, Jesus showed it in the wilderness when he was tempted. Every time the enemy came, he pushed it back with the word. But she was trying to have a conversation. So you can't have a conversation with darkness because it's going to keep bringing you in. That's why it goes on to say in that 1 Corinthians 15:33, evil company corrupts it. If you keep tying it in, it's going to end up taking you down. So notice. And because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. In other words, there's always a price to pay when you don't do what he says. And it's not a small price. Because in other words, he took him down from where he placed him. Let's go back. He said, when you were little in your own eyes, he raised you up. But because you didn't listen, he's taken you down. He raised him up and he took him down. That's why Psalm 75 says, promotion cometh not from the east nor the west. It's God who lifts up one and then he puts down another one. It's crystal clear. Verse 24. Then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. Duh. Yeah, okay. I violated the Lord's command and your instruction. But he still isn't free. I was afraid, notice, of the people, so I gave in to them. Well, he was the king. They were going to do whatever he said. But there again, notice it still is like, humor me, don't charge this against me, because I was afraid and I gave in. In other words, I was no longer ruling as king. I stepped down from where I had been placed. In other words, I gave up my authority. Now let's go back to the garden. Adam had been given the authority in the garden. You handle it. You run it. You name the animals. You do all of this. When he gave in, he gave it up. This is the same. So therefore, when God has placed you in this space, your failure to honor it sends you on this downward spiral. On this downward spiral. Because he clearly put you there. And you decided, I'm going to run it the way I want to run it. He's like, no, we're not having any of that. I put you there. You know, street term, parents say, I brought you in this with mamas, I take you out. He said, you're done now, like, clip. You know, that's what they'll do. They say, oh, you gonna rear yourself up at me? Hold on, last time, check. So I was afraid of the people and I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship the Lord. Notice the language changed again. Not your Lord this time, so I may worship the Lord. But he's asking the wrong one to forgive him, saying, Samuel, please forgive my sin because I want to worship the Lord. But Samuel said, too late. Now notice what he said. I'm not going back with you. No, I'm not falling for that. You're not going to have me messed up. He said, you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king. And we need to get down to verse 29 for something special. And Samuel turned to leave. Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe, and it tore. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. There's always somebody else that he's waiting to give what you were unwilling to be a good steward over. He's always ready to say, oh, I know somebody who will be glad for this. I know somebody who will. Now, because you're not, he says, I know who to get it to. They'll appreciate it. Yeah, he said, they will appreciate it. You didn't. Verse 29, he who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change his mind. Now he said, when he places you there, when he places you there, and you know he placed you there, you know you didn't get there yourself. You know you didn't. You know you had nothing to do with it. So that's why you should be thanking him. You should be praising him. And then you should treasure it to say, he got me here, so I need to be a great steward over it. There might be some things about it that I don't like. There might be some things about it that I'd rather do otherwise. But you remind yourself, he put me here. He put me here, and because he put me here, then he's saying I need to stay here until he says I shouldn't be here. And then he's going to do something. He said, are you being this good steward like right now, doing what he says, doing what he said? Because I'm going to tell you, the only reason I haven't left Fresh Start, because the Lord hadn't told me to. Now, I've been asked to leave several times. Come over here. Come over here. And you know the things that they try to do? Let me tell you the language they'll use. They'll say, you know, you have a PhD. You deserve this. We know exactly how to treat, because they're also saying it would help us if we had your name on the marquee. You see? Yeah. That's what it is. It make them. So, and we could give you this, where you don't have to work as hard. You know, we'll have your staff, we'll have all of these things. And you know the flesh be saying, go for it, bro. Go for it, bro. Yeah, you do deserve it. Yeah, you've been laboring hard. You've been laboring hard in the vineyard. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. He's about to take you higher. You see how you can fall for that? You see how you can fall for it? Like, nope. Nope. You say, you see how you can fall for it? Go on over here, where they already got the house built for you. They already got the house for you. They'll give you membership at the golf club, Mike. They already know. See, if we know you like God, we give you membership at the golf club. We're going to have you covered. You and your family. Like, uh-huh. So it's like that, and like, no, I'm not doing that one. I am not doing that one. I am not doing it. Because I know he did, and if I interfere, I know what's going to happen. I already know what's going to happen. Because I would have allowed my emotions to be seduced into something that would appeal to my flesh. It wouldn't be God in it at all. In spite of how strong a case they could make. You know, we get you these armor bearers and everything, and we'll buy you a car, and we'll do all of that. We'll get it covered. Yeah, we got it all. We got it all for you. Yeah. So we got you won't have to work hard no more. Like, yeah, okay, all right. It ain't happening. It is not happening. No, I'm not going anywhere. So I said, you might as well get used to it. I'm not going anywhere. He hadn't told me to go anywhere. But that hadn't changed the fact that the overtures being there. I get his word. Well, we got this. There's this vacancy over here. Why don't you come? You know, they'll just take you right away. They won't even go through no surgery. They'll just take you right away. Like, no, I'll help you out, but I'm not coming. Nope. Nope. I'm not coming. So in other words, he wants your obedience. Because when he puts you in a situation that you clearly know, were it not for him, you would not be in it. Because here's the thing. There are some situations that God will create for you that did not exist. Where you clearly know he did it. It didn't even exist, and he framed it out so that it would fit you. You didn't have to work for it. You didn't have to beat somebody out for it. You didn't have to out-interview somebody for it. You didn't have to go through all of that. God just said, I'm going to put you here. And you could have a messed up resume, a busted way of doing things. You stumble all over yourself, and they still said, we want you. You know God was in it. You had a bad proposal. Your proposal was messed up. So you had grammatical errors all in your presentation and everything else. And you walking out of there feeling bad, knowing, oh man, I really messed this one up. And they say, you know what? When can you start? I mean, then you're like, boy, this has to be God here, because I did nothing. You've been late for work all the time. You've been getting write-ups and everything else been going on. And then you look up and they say, we've been watching you. I'm about to get fired, We've been watching you. No, we see something we want you to do. You know God was in that. You know God was in. You know God. Or God may move you to a situation where it's like, I'm going to move you away from somebody you've been having difficulty with. I'm going to move you away, or I'm going to move them or move you. And then you're going to say, well, he move you, and you got to say, man, God had to do that. God had to do that. And you say, I'm glad he did, because I couldn't take it no more. Then you will find, you know what God will do? God will even change some people's attitude around you. And you're trying to say, what's wrong with them? They must be sick. Something got to be going on. Because all of a sudden they start acting different. They start being nice to you. And you're trying to say, they ain't never spoke to me before. And all of a sudden they speaking to me. You know God has. You just know God has. Because you still had on your mind how they used to speak. You were prepared to not speak to them. And they spoke to you. I see. You know God's hand is in it. And so you pay attention to what he is doing. I mean, and that really is what it boils down to. All right, some reflection before we go. I'm going to make sure that you have a chance to reflect before we go. We'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll take some reflection, but that'll be the extent.
Yes. I learned from the story of Saul and Samuel. First, we just coming from Saul partially obeyed God, and they couldn't help him.
Partial obedience is
just like,
disobedience.
exactly.
No, there is no partial obedience.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, he thought he was, obeying him some.
Let me ask you this. Are you interested in eating a half-baked cake?
Not at all.
Okay, I just checked. Okay. Okay, so go. That'd be a bad experience, right? It's in the process of being one, is what it is. It's not quite a cake yet. It's a cake mix at that time. All right, anybody else?
I think that that statement that the Lord was, when Saul grabbed Samuel's cloak and it tore, and Samuel told him that the Lord is going to tear the kingdom away from you and give it to someone better than you. It gave me goosebumps. To think that if we are not obedient, if we are not doing the things that the Lord has called us to do, that he will, not even that he might, but that he will find someone else, right? And just remind me also of Elijah, when Elijah was like, they've killed all the people, and I'm the only one left. And the Lord was like, yeah, not really. I do have, the Lord always has, I don't want to say contingency plan, but the Lord always has a ram in the bush. Maybe that's better.
Yeah, there's always somebody in the shadows that you can't see, that the unsung. The unsung, that their name is not up in lights, but God's watching them all along, because He's ready to pull them out. He's ready to pull them out. When He's ready for them, He just pulls them out, and people start wondering, how did they get there? God had already set them up, and now He just slides them in. And people say, well, I don't know how they could have been there. That's a God thing. Yeah. That's a God thing. You find somebody with all this great experience, this great pedigree and everything, and you're convinced that that's who would be selected, and you look up and it's somebody like, what? What? Because God's hand is there. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, just a constant reminder that, you know, he put you here, and taking full advantage of your seat at the table, basically, if that makes sense.
Well, because here's the deal. In the midst of it all, it's not supposed to make you comfortable. It should make you to a point to where you know, if I'm going to stay here, I got to trust him. He's not bringing you to this place of comfort because at that stage you don't grow. So he's got to have you in this spot where it says, I need him to be successful in this. As soon as you think, I got this, then that's the time you're like, uh-oh, you're ungrateful soul. I did all of this through you. You weren't responsible. In fact, if I didn't put you here, you wouldn't even be here in the first place. So let's just be clear. So, oh, you think you got this? Well, let me just back out. And that's what happened to Samson. He took it for granted. When you go to Judges, he took it for granted, the strength that he had. And when that spirit of darkness, that seductive spirit got him, Delilah, when Delilah got him and kept charming him but he became so arrogant as a result. I can tell her anything. I tell her anything. I'm going to play with her. Then I'll tell her anything. But the more she talked, then the more he kept getting weak and told what he wasn't supposed to tell. And it was at that point, he didn't realize until after he told that he had already been won over. And it was at that stage that it was too late, until he asked the Lord not to restore his sight. He just asked the Lord, would you one more time? And the Lord heard him because he knew his heart had changed back. And he said, I'm going to give you all the strength that you had to take this whole thing down. Because when you take it for granted, then it starts to fall away. Because you become self-reliant. 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 And that really is. Okay, anything else? So, Father, we thank you for the challenge that you give us, and the way that you give us an opportunity to cooperate with you, knowing that apart from you, we can do nothing. So, ask that you watch over those who are physically here as they go, and for those who are tuned in, that they would tell others about what we have learned and to understand that it's not just for us. We thank you for being patient with us and are in great anticipation of what else you will do.